Hey everyone, it's Erica. Today I'll be reviewing the Recheel dual tip acrylic markers. I bought this set of budget-friendly markers on Amazon. Nothing fancy, just something I could test without feeling guilty about the price. It's a 30-piece set for $9 and I'll include the link below. My journey began as I was working on this painting I call Echoes of Florence. I just couldn't get the features clean enough, so I decided to try something new. Each marker in the set has a fine tip and a brush tip that I thought would be great for getting all the little details. But let's circle back to where this journey began, with my standard acrylic paints. The bike and its shadow were the first things I blocked in, anchoring the whole composition and giving me a clear light source to work from. I work in layers, starting with an underpainting to establish contrast, then gradually adding color on top. The stone wall came next, with rough, dappled texture that helped it recede into the background. I used a dry brush technique in places to give it some grit. This work is inspired by a photo I've held onto since I was 16, walking the streets of Florence on my very first trip abroad. Just a quiet green bike leaning against a stone wall with flowers spilling out of wooden crates. I didn't know that photo I snapped would stick with me for years, but sometimes the quietest moments become the most vivid. There was something about the colors, the shadows, and the stillness. When I started painting, I knew I wanted to honor that nostalgia. I chose a limited palette, purple for the shadows, green for the bike, and orange to bring in warmth and unify the piece. From the start, I focus on atmosphere. Not worrying about the details, just laying in big shapes, getting contrast right, and finding that balance between sunlight and shadow. The bike was trickier than I expected. It's small, given that this piece is only 5 by 7, and those tiny curves and spokes started to blur no matter how small a brush I grabbed. Even the brush with the finest point didn't give me the sharpness I needed. I considered going in with pen, but I liked the acrylic on its own. It felt personal, like the memory itself instead of an illustration, so I kept going. I softened edges where I could, refined shapes and stages, but I was starting to get frustrated. I wanted those clean lines, especially on the wheels and pedals. And that's when I decided to try something new. I pulled an assortment of the markers in colors I thought I might need to finish this work. I really want to dig into some of the highlights and some of the more shadowy areas. On the wheels and the bike, and even in the plants. So let's take a look at one of these markers. This is the brush tip, and you can see it has the ability to get a fine point or a wider stroke. Really helpful for tapering lines and getting really precise details. And then this fine point on the other side is sharp, but it lacks variation in stroke width. I'll test a little bit on this paper in the back. First with the fine tip, it goes on really nice and opaque. Now we'll do some with the wide brush tip, so we can get wide lines and very thin lines. You can get a good variety with these markers, which is cool. Let's start working on the painting and see how it goes though. I was a little skeptical, but immediately I could tell they would be helpful, specifically with the highlights. The set has a few green tones that really made the highlights on the bike frame pop. The markers have a good pigment and they layered really well over the dry acrylic. I added some pink and green highlights to the floral cascades to capture them bathed in the sunshine. I also moved on to some of the features on the bike using the silver and black markers. I did notice a few factors to consider with this set. One is the finish. From certain angles, the penwork stands out because it's slightly shinier than the acrylic paint I use. I recommend testing how it appears with the acrylics you use before drawing straight on your work. Second is the value scale included. In my opinion, there's not many colors that felt dark enough, so I had to get my paint back out to deepen the shadows. Overall though, for the price, I'd say they're a great tool to have on hand if you're doing mixed media or want to sharpen your final layers. Just do some planning ahead and go darker with your base paint layer to heighten the contrast. This piece reminded me that it's okay to change course mid-painting, to reach for new tools, to experiment, and to revisit old memories with new eyes. If you're someone who struggles with clean details in acrylic, I'd say give paint markers a try. They don't replace brushes, but they definitely earn their place in the toolkit. If you have a brand you prefer, drop a comment down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.